Okay, take a look at this. This is Andromeda, our closest galactic neighbor, but you've never seen it like this before. The Hubble Space Telescope spent a decade putting this incredible portrait together, and what it's showing us? Well, it's completely rewriting the story of our little corner of the universe. So let's dive in and see what this picture is really all about.
I mean, it's almost impossible to really wrap your head around the scale here. Every single one of those tiny little dots, that's an individual star. We're seeing them from 2.5 million light years away. And you got to think, each one probably has its own planets, its own story. It's just mind-boggling. And that bright part in the middle? The density of stars is so insane, they just merge into this solid golden glow.
But here's the twist. This isn't just a pretty picture. Nope. This stunning portrait is actually a piece of cosmic evidence. It turns out Andromeda isn't just some gentle, peaceful spiral galaxy hanging out in the night sky. It's actually a crime scene, a place of incredible violence with a seriously turbulent past. And that history? It has huge, even cataclysmic consequences for its neighbors. And, yeah, that includes us.
So, to really get what this new image is telling us, we've got to take a step back. We need to look at how our whole view of Andromeda has changed over the years. You know, for centuries, what it was one of the absolute biggest questions in all of astronomy.
I mean, think about it. We've been looking at Andromeda for 1,000 years. It all started as just a nebulous smear in some ancient texts. Then, the first telescopes came along and gave us a slightly better peek. The first real game changer was in 1888, when the first photograph showed this clear spiral shape. But even then, the biggest question was still on the table. Was this thing inside our own Milky Way, or was it a totally separate island universe way, way out there?
And that whole debate was finally put to rest in 1925, all thanks to Edwin Hubble and these amazing things called Cepheid variables. Now, these stars are basically like standard candles in space. They have this neat trick where their brightness pulses at a specific rate, and that rate tells you their true brightness. So if you know how bright it really is and you see how dim it looks from Earth, boom, you can calculate the distance. Hubble did the math and found they were about 1 million light years away, way outside the Milky Way. And just like that, in a single moment, our universe got a whole lot bigger.
So for a long time after Hubble's big discovery, everyone kind of thought Andromeda was just this, a relatively quiet, normal spiral galaxy. But when we started looking closer, we found some really weird clues, these ripples in its structure that hinted something dramatic had happened.
Okay, so the first big puzzle was these really strange dust rings. Scientists found not one, but 2 of them. There's this huge outer ring just packed with new hot blue stars. And then there's another, smaller ring tucked in closer to the center. Now, finding 2 distinct rings like this, that's not just a coincidence. It's not some random fluke. Something had to have made them.
And here's where we get the big breakthrough. An astronomer named David Bloch came up with the perfect analogy. He said these rings are just like ripples in a pond, right? If you see ripples spreading out in water, you know for a fact that something was dropped in. So the question became, what got dropped into Andromeda? Well, scientists figured it out. The rings were leftovers from a collision that went down about 210 million years ago. And they even found the culprit, this little dwarf galaxy, Messier 32, or M32. They ran all these computer simulations, and yep, a head-on collision with M32 punching right through Andromeda's disk could create the exact same rings we see today. So that solved the first piece of Andromeda's violent puzzle. But here's the thing. Those rings, that was just the beginning. The full Hubble picture, the one that took 10 years to make, showed that this collision was actually a pretty recent event in a much, much longer and way more violent history.
And this is why that complete picture was so critical. See, the first Hubble survey really only looked at the northern half of the galaxy, which, well, it looked pretty normal, relatively calm. But when they finally mapped the southern region, astronomers realized the 2 sides were totally different. The south is a mess, way more disturbed, and that's where the clues to a much bigger cosmic crime were hiding.
So digging into this southern region, astronomers found a bunch of key clues. First, a gigantic stream of stars just trailing off into space. Then, a halo of gas that was packed with heavier elements. And of course, there's M32 itself. But here's the smoking gun. All 3 of these things have the same chemical composition, what astronomers call metallicity. It's basically the same mix of elements. It's a chemical fingerprint, and it meant they all had to come from the same single massive event. This all led to what's called the M32P theory. The P is for progenitor or ancestor.
Scientists now think that a few billion years ago, a much bigger galaxy, an ancestor of M32, with the mass of 25 billion suns, smashed into Andromeda. This colossal merger kicked off a huge burst of star-making, creating about a fifth of all the stars we see in Andromeda today. And you know what? It also perfectly explained this huge population of middle-aged stars that had been a mystery for years.
And this theory gives us a really neat answer to the M32 puzzle. That little dwarf galaxy we see today, it's not a separate galaxy that just happened to punch through. No, it's the leftover, dense core of that much bigger galaxy, M32P, that got stripped of its outer layers. It actually survived the collision and is still hanging around in orbit, a living testament to that incredibly violent past.
Okay, so Andromeda's past is full of these violent collisions. But what's really wild is that the exact same Hubble data that uncovered all this history is now making us completely rethink its future, and ours too.
Now, I'm sure you've probably heard of the Milkometa theory, right? For years, the accepted story was that Andromeda and our own Milky Way were locked on a collision course, doomed to smash into each other in about 4.5 billion years.
Well, this new Hubble data has pretty much thrown that certainty right out the window. Because, with this incredible precision, astronomers could track not just how fast Andromeda is hurtling towards us, but also its subtle sideways motion across the sky. And that one new variable? It changes everything. The odds have completely shifted. A head-on collision is now only about a 50-50 shot, and not for another 10 billion years maybe.
So what this really drives home is that science is always a work in progress, right? It's all about constant refinement. Getting this much clearer, more detailed picture of our next-door neighbor has completely flipped our understanding of our own cosmic fate. What we thought was an unavoidable future is now just, well, it's just one possibility out of many.
When you really think about it, this single, absolutely breathtaking image is so much more than just a picture. It's a history book, it's a crime scene, and it's even a kind of crystal ball. All of it written in the light of hundreds of millions of stars.
And the amount of information here is it's staggering. To give you some perspective, you would need 75 8K Ultra HD screens all lined up just to see the whole image in its full detail. And you can bet scientists are nowhere close to being done finding all the secrets that are hidden in there.
So this incredible image let us piece together the violent history of our closest neighbor in a way we never could before. And it kind of leaves you with one last big thought, doesn't it? If Andromeda is holding all these incredible secrets, what violent stories are written in the stars of our own galaxy, just waiting for us to figure out how to read them?